Welcome to everyone to our third episode of Women Leaders in Customer Success on behalf of myself, Minna, and the Practical CSM. So I'm very, very excited to bring you this amazing CS leaders, great female leaders, and a talk panelist every month. As you know, every month I will be hosting a new guest speaker, and we will be picking at different various topics that relate to CS, and some that are a bit more personal, as our conversation today is. So today I have the pleasure of introducing Miranda Dziekonski, and I did practice that before the webinar as my guest, and we will be talking about recession-proofing your CS career. Unfortunately, I know that this might be a hot topic and close to your heart, some of your hearts due to the recent changes in the landscape. So hopefully Miranda will be able to share some good tips with us as we get into our conversation of today. So let's get started. Now, obviously, Miranda, I know in the CS community, you really don't need any introductions, but we'd love to still know, obviously, a little bit more about you, and maybe you can throw in a fun fact about yourself as well.
Sure. So yeah, Miranda Dziekonski. I have been in customer-facing operations now for well over 20 years. And actually, if I do the math, I think I'm hitting my 23rd or 24th year now. I started out at a very large company, 9 years, where I managed a big portfolio doing customer success work. It was before it was called customer success. I managed accounts like, GM, Toyota, AstraZeneca, and all of the accounts that supported them. And then I moved to Startup World, where I've now been part of 8 startups. This is my 8th one I'm on, holding various roles from director level all the way up to chief operations officer and everything in between. Had 4 exits, so 4 events, which is really good track record in Silicon Valley. And yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. My scope is pretty broad. So I have owned everything from human resources to customer success to sales, all of it. Currently, where I'm at, while I hold the title of SVP of CS, I am running CS, implementation, tech support, but I'm also running, for now, the people operations, biz ops, and finance component as well. So this is something that I am uniquely set up to talk about because of the human resource experience, because of the building and scaling smaller startups. Fun fact about me, let's see, that one is a hard one. How about I did roller derby. I was a roller derby girl for a year. I'm a very strong roller skater, and I did roller derby for about a year. And it really will wear you out quickly. For anybody that has done roller derby, like you're slamming on your knees all the time, you're getting beat up pretty hard. So about a year was all I could take. That was about 10 years ago. So that's a little fun fact about me.
Yeah, we would have never known that, but I mean, that is an amazing career accolade so far, and obviously that really brings us to today's topic about recession-proofing your CS career, because you've been there, you've done it, you've worn the t-shirt, and you've got like lots of experience from not just from the CS side of things, but we obviously, when we spoke first, you picked this topic and this was close to your heart. So do you want to just tell the audience a little bit why and why kind of it's super important of foolproofing your career?
Yeah, so I have now been around for a while, so I've seen the ups and downs of the economy. You can go back to the .com bust, Y2K. I don't know if anybody remembers Y2K, but in 1999, I was working at a bank and we were all kind of waiting to see if the world was going to end once the clocks rolled around to 2000, and that had a pretty bad impact on the markets. Mm-hmm. And then I was in automotive during the 2008 downturn, lived in Michigan, and Michigan was hit very hard. In some areas, we had unemployment rates, like in some regions, 25 to 50% in some regions, because they were so dependent on the automotive industry. And, cities like Detroit and Flint were decimated. I made a decision that I wanted stability in my career. And it's not as easy as just making a decision. I then started thinking about the work that I had to do to make sure I had, enough social equity to where when I needed to call in a favor, I could.
Right.
And that became like a 10-year kind of mission where I was constantly giving back, mentoring, writing, talking, speaking. It really started taking traction maybe in the last 7 or 8 years, but I knew that by having given to the network so much that if I were to ever need them, that I could call on them and not feel bad about it, right? Because I had given. So it is important because I have seen those ups and downs. I was also, quite frankly, a single mom for a long time. I met my husband 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago. My son is now 22, but I was a single mom struggling paycheck to paycheck. And that not having that network, not having that community was a reality for me. If I were to lose my job, I didn't know how I was going to feed my kid. So these are all reasons why not only just seeing the cycles, but living through some of these things and making it real for me is why this is important to me.
I love that. That is such a great personal story from there. And I think that part where you give back to the community definitely shows, because you've been a big influencer in the space. But what would you say has been kind of different when you've been, let's say, job searching in the past? And what do you think is different in terms of retaining a job right now? Even just a couple of years ago, obviously, we've spoke about kind of the hard-hitting recessions back in a few of the phases, but I guess we're in that cycle again right now. So what would you say is different about sort of searching right now?
Yeah, so if everybody takes and thinks back to 2021, we had what peaked up as the Great Resignation or the Great Reshuffle. Tech companies and companies in general were desperate to get employees. It was definitely what I would coin an employee market, not an employer market. Employees could go out and land jobs like that because there was this lack of talent available. And that has shifted significantly over the last 6 months. And I won't go in completely to the economics, but just to ground us as to why interest rates started going up. So, we've seen that happen. The Fed here, at least in the United States, has continued to increase the interest rates, which means the folks that give money to the VCs and the PE firms, and I know I'm oversimplifying this, the cost of money for them has gone up. So they're giving less money, which means VCs, PE firms, and other investors are scrutinizing companies more that they're going to invest in. So they're not just making it rain dollar bills to all these tech companies, which then has resulted in tech companies being very careful about their bottom line. For the first time in forever, since I remember working in tech, I have not experienced or witnessed companies scrutinizing their spend so heavily. So that brings us here to where we are, and it makes it harder for folks just to go out and land jobs, which means you have to be much more strategic about your job hunt and your approach, and also much more cognizant, if you are employed, about how you make sure you are relevant and providing value continuously, to where if there is a reduction in force, or if there are, areas of the organization that are being scrutinized, it's very clear that your team or your department is needed and you're driving revenue, or whatever it may be, whatever the important number is for your company.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair summary in terms of where we are now. And everyone's looking at that bottom line a lot more tighter than they used to be. So first thing to go is positions, right? So by the way, just as a housekeeping, if you do have any questions to Miranda, just throw them in this chat and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So talking about this reducing expenses, what kind of advice would you have for CSMs that if you're in a company that is sort of facing a little bit more harder times or tougher financial scrutiny, what are some of the activities you would recommend people to do so you can show that value to that organization? You mentioned already that sort of revenue side, but what are the kind of activities?
Yeah. So first, if you are in a customer success function that doesn't own renewals, upsells, or expansion, I would talk to your leaders and say, how are we tying back the work that we're doing to the bigger number? How are we showing the organization that we're impacting renewals, we're impacting expansion, that we are directly impacting the revenue in a positive way? That's thing one, have that conversation. If you are somebody who owns renewals and expansion, then I would make sure that you are managing your portfolio like you would manage a business. So really understand what your levers are, how you're going to get there. If you're falling behind or lagging on your numbers at all, talk to your management and leadership and get their help to figure out how to bring that number up. But I guess the bigger overarching theme is have those conversations one way or another and understand how you are being tied to the dollars that are driven in that organization. That is key, especially in a downturn. The organizations that usually get looked at first when you're looking at a reduction in force are organizations that are not tied directly to revenue, because revenue is king. You know, it's definitely, you know, the board will raise an eyebrow at you if you're cutting roles that are driving revenue. So you want to understand, how am I connected to revenue? That's really crucial, and that is a big change, I think, in how most customer success organizations have thought or operated in the past. I've always led my customer success organizations like that, to where we are tied to some type of revenue, because I've always known that fact to be true.
Yeah. And what if you are a bit more commercially shy or not sort of so accustomed to this? Where would you direct people to kind of learn more about it or start kind of feeling your skill set, getting better at that?
So when you say commercially shy, you're saying somebody that isn't comfortable with like negotiating a contract, correct? Or
maybe more meaning like doesn't necessarily have such a business interest yet. It's been more like, okay, you know, we practice CSM, but not necessarily been you know, tied to a number before, and is now obviously we're advising people to kind of start really looking at this. So where would you start getting kind of information on that?
So first, it's okay if as a CSM, you're not the one that is commercially, I don't want to say motivated, but let's say you're not the one negotiating the renewals, or you're not comfortable doing that or asking for price increases. It can be okay as long as the business model is okay with that. And then I would say your company should have an account team, and you should be part of it, again, to show clearly where you're driving value. Now, if it is a skill set or a motion that you want to build, kudos, because I think the future of CS, customer success, will have to get more comfortable. And this is a very unpopular thing for some people, but we will have to be more comfortable with owning that renewals number, and in some cases the upsell number as well. So I would definitely reach out to your fellow account managers or your fellow account executives, shadow calls, understand how they talk to customers. Now, I'm not saying I want customer success managers to become an AE or become an AM, but there's a lot of tidbits that we can learn from them, just like there are a lot of tidbits they can learn from us. What we do in this motion is really partner with our customers to make sure that they are getting value out of our products. And if we're doing that well and our customers view us as strategic partners, then going to get the renewals should be just like another conversation you have with them. Where it becomes very awkward is when you aren't doing that. And then you go in and say, oh yeah, by the way, you're renewing in 3 months. And it's the first time you're having a conversation. That's a bad thing.
Yeah. So the continuous motion, I like that brilliance of like going and learning from experts in a little bit who have done it over and over again beforehand. Cool. So while we're talking about metrics, and I know we'll come back to this in a second, you did do a search yourself recently. What would be some of the metrics you would recommend people to dig into to understand the financials of a company you're considering joining, or you're in a process of looking at? How did you go about that?
Yeah, so I have a whole article, I think, out there. If I don't, I should. I think I did publish the whole guidance of what I ask, questions that I ask. So I, of course, always want to know the runway. How much time do we have? I want to know the burn. I want to know what is the ARR to headcount ratio. That kind of tells me, are we operating efficiently or not efficiently? These things are very important, especially these days when money is harder to come by. What you don't want to do is get into a company that is too over-indexed on humans, not indexed enough on process, leveraging process technology, and so on. And it becomes unsustainable. You also want to get into a place where you have a solid 1.5 to 2 years of runway if possible. A year is nice. Anything under a year in this current economic environment can be difficult depending on the business and what the sales numbers look like. I also say dig in on the sales. What have been the quarterly goals? Have they met the quarterly goals? If yes, great. If no, why not? I like to look at cost of acquisition as well. This is especially important for people in customer success. If there is a very high cost of acquisition, it's even more important to retain that customer even longer, to be able to make back that cost of acquisition, which leads me into understanding what your churn is and the average tenure of a customer that does churn. How long have they been there? Are you making back that cost of acquisition money, or the money that it costs to acquire the customer? There are a ton of other things that I look at, but I like to look at the full health of the company, not just the health of the customer base. And I urge folks to do that. You look at the health of the company, not just the customer base, because yes, the customer base is very important. But what I've been telling CS folks and CS leaders is to learn about the business, right? Get comfortable with the numbers. The more you know about the business and the numbers, the more you're going to understand what part you play in driving revenue, what part you play in account stability. And it's going to help you understand even greater what your levers are to move those needles.
Yeah. No, I think that's such a solid advice. Going a bit more like if you were a VC going to be investing in a company, so doing your due diligence of looking at really understanding where this company is going to go. And like you said, 4 exits clearly prove that this kind of methodology is great. What about this? Obviously, I saw your LinkedIn post when you were searching for your new role. What was you talked about some of the methodology and how you went about your search, and how you found kind of what you thought was going to be a right fit for you, and what does that look like? So maybe if you could share some of your stories for the benefit of others in terms of what that looks like.
Yeah. So I was at Swiftly for right around 4 years and made a decision that it was time to move on. It was the first time ever in my career that I put my notice in before I had another opportunity lined up. And it was November of last year, so I knew the economy was on the downside, and it was terrifying, I won't lie. But I also had a very good relationship with the CEO there, and I wanted to give him plenty of time to be able to backfill me. So the first thing I did is I reached out to all the CEOs and folks that I built relationships with that have companies that support customer success. Those folks will find, they'll get roles that come across their plate all the time, specifically for leadership. On On the contrary, if I were a CSM, I would still reach out to folks at those that maybe I had relationships with at those companies, but maybe at a different level. I would still, like, if I knew a director of customer success at a customer success platform, I would have reached out to them as well, just to say, hey, heads up, I'm on the market. The next thing I did is I reached out to folks within my equity firm. So the folks that, on my board, and let them know that I was thinking about looking, asked for any introductions that they had to any of their portfolio companies. I reached out to people I knew at PE firms, at VCs, people in my network. I just reached out. I had a few CEOs who sent out emails on my behalf to their investors and, gave me, a recommendation, which then got me into some conversations. Ultimately, I ended up talking to 39 companies in total, and I had 14 final interviews. So it was exhausting, but it was also a really good learning lesson for me to understand what was out there. Where do I want to be? I am somebody who is, very moved by a mission. I want to do more than just go to work and make money. I want to go to work and make sure and feel like I'm making a difference. However, the one thing that enabled me to be able to do this what happened the years before. And it was what I said earlier. I invested in my network. I was giving back. I was mentoring, writing, speaking, sharing out what I learned to help other folks, to where I built that equity. So when I did reach out, most folks were willing to put their name out and see what was available in their network. Now, that is definitely what I would advise at a leadership level. I also have shared my one pager that gives the summary of what I know, what I do, who I am. I've posted that a couple of times on LinkedIn for folks. And I know multiple people that are now using that framework. So as an intro, when they're reaching out, that way it gives everybody a snapshot of who you are, what you've owned, the results that you've driven, so on and so forth.
So rather than a CV, more of a, how would you describe that?
Yeah, so it's like your cover letter, but it's better than a cover letter because it gives the full summary snapshot. And I'll, anybody who wants to see it, just ping me on LinkedIn. I'll send you over a copy of it. I also have published just a short snapshot of how I landed 39 interviews. I can send you a link to that as well.
Grant, I think that post was really, really great in terms of how you went about it methodically, and it needs to be a full-time job in searching for a job, right? One thing I did want to call out and kind of ask you a little bit more. You said you pick companies that are mission-driven, and that's your value. How would you advise other people to kind of look at drivers for change? Why should they change jobs? How do you identify kind of the motivators that make you tick?
I mean, that's a personal thing, right?
Yes.
So that's a really hard thing to answer. Everybody's going to be different. I know a lot of people who making money motivates them, and that's okay. That's what they want to do. And they don't really care as much about the mission. They want to look at the opportunity. And, will this company IPO? Or will this company be acquired? And how much stake in the company am I going to get with my equity? And, I know people like that, and that's fine. I am somebody who I know the communities I want to serve, and it hasn't always lined up, to be clear. I've joined companies where I really liked the team. The mission was solid, but it wasn't like I'm out like Mother Teresa, giving to the world. Like, I was definitely making somebody money, right? But I really liked the team. So I joined under that premise. But it's a very personal thing. That's a really hard question to answer. I think each individual has to just understand what it is they want. And honestly, back in the day when I was a single mom, I just needed a paycheck. Mission be damned, or, where this company was going. If I had a job, I was happy because I was able to support my son, pay my bills. So I think there are a lot of folks in the population that's their reality as well. I've been doing this for 24 years now. So I've worked my way to where now I'm focused on mission, but 10, 15 years ago, I was focused on the paycheck. So I'm being real.
And that's, I like that you are being real, because I think it also can change over the course of the time. And sometimes you join for different reasons, different companies, right? But I think it's good to do that assessment of what's important for right now. I always like a good reflection. So what kind of lessons do you think you learned from the times that you've changed your role? Anything from recently or any time beforehand? What sort of roofing tips you give to the audience?
Yeah, I just kind of reflecting back on lessons learned as I change roles. I'll spin it to where, things I think about when I join a company. I am always focused, first, when I join a company, I always respect the history of everything that has happened to get the company there. Mm-hmm. And I urge everybody to do that. And it's a big reflection of mine as I leave a company and join the next company, all the work that has gone in to get us here, even though some of it may be strung together, it worked and it got us here. So I think that's thing one. Thing two, network. You need to build your network before you need it. And to go out and expect strangers to speak on your behalf is a very tall ask. That's why I'm a big believer in you give back to the community and the community will give back to you.
I like that. It definitely is the good karma around it. Great. Okay, we've got a couple of questions from our audience. I'll go to Jill first. Jill's question is, how should CSMs show their value revenue-wise if they have worked in conjunction with account managers?
So I think if I'm understanding what Jill's saying is the account managers own the financial side and the CSMs will own the relationship side. That's the model that we had at Swiftly at the end. At the beginning, it wasn't like that, but at the end, it was definitely like that. And what we would do is it was an account team. Instead of the AM versus the CSM, they were the account team. And anything revenue-wise that happened on that, they both got credit for it. While they were comped differently, they both got credit for it. And that comes as a leader of making sure that the goals are aligned between the two teams to where they are marching together instead of against each other. It's a little bit harder to break it out and say the CSM did 80% and the AM did 20 or vice versa, so they should get credit for 80%. No, you just align the goals, and if everybody is meeting their goals and moving in the right direction, then we all win.
Amazing. Yeah. So yeah, hold yourself partnering to the account manager and look at that from that point of view. We've got a question from Lou. Thank you for happy to be here. Well, we're glad you're here. Are you saying lifetime customer value should be a North Star metrics?
Lifetime customer value should be something you definitely measure. The North Star metric is going to depend on your company and your business model. I personally am a big fan of net retention being the North Star metric because that's all encompassing of your churn plus your growth. But definitely your CAC to LTV ratio should be a KPI that you're measuring.
Perfect. Anyone else?
Really good question.
Great question indeed. Well, I want to always do a little bit of a summary and a wrap up. So what are kind of the things you want the audience to remember from your talk?
So I think first, one, I will just say, keep your chin up. If you are somebody out there looking for a job, it is a tough market. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I never sugarcoat things, but it's not impossible. There are people hiring. So one, just keep your chin up, keep at it. Two, build your network before you need it. your network. A lot of the times, especially in tech, it's all about who you know and not what you know. That is fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. So build that network. 3, like, be an owner of your business. Understand if you are currently a CSM, like, where are you in the grand scheme of things? What is your NRR? What is your gross retention? What are the company level goals? And what are your levers that you have available to impact that? Make yourself relevant, and figure out with your leadership, like, how is customer success viewed in your organization when it comes to a revenue generating function? How are you viewed? Are you viewed as somebody who's supporting the revenue or somebody who is a cost of goods sale? Are you a cog or are you a revenue driver? Where are you hitting in the budget? Those are the things that are important to understand when you're thinking about recession-proofing your career.
Yeah, no, I think that's very relevant. I also, when I interview people, I ask how much they understand, what the effort level is per account that they've serviced before. How do they prioritize their time based on, revenue efforts and so forth. So that understands of, looking at metrics a little bit more deeper is definitely something of worthwhile. We've got a question from Rakit. How do I move from account management to CSM? I love it that you're jumping on this side of the fence.
Rakit, that is a big, big topic. And something I don't think we have the time to answer here. There are many articles out there, I think, now about how to move from account management to customer success. I will just say this one thing. In your organization, look at your customer success team, if there is a customer success team, and how they operate. The difference between an account manager and a customer success isn't usually who owns revenue or who owns commercials. It's more about, like, the mindset. Customer success managers, usually, especially in a B2B enterprise world, are managing a portfolio proactively, working with their customers to make sure that the customers are achieving all of the outcomes that they need to and that they're successful. All of that, like, it's a little bit deeper. And in some companies, the account managers are very commercially focused and they're just looking at where they can expand. Customer success is marrying all of these things together and driving everything across the finish line. But a big, big topic that we could probably do another session on it. Yeah.
And how do you divide the responsibilities there? Yeah. Let's have a time for one more question from Juliana. Considering the SaaS company B2B drives growth through technology, we are changing from high touch to low touch service. Can you give us some advice to how to keep our level services and customer engagement?
Oh my gosh, so many folks are doing this right now, right? Because now it's no longer make it rain dollar bills everywhere. And we have to really think about how we can efficiently engage with our customers to make sure they're getting the minimum experience needed to be successful on the product. So first, start with segmentation. I'm sure you have a segmentation already, but if you don't, start with segmentation: enterprise, mid-market, SMB, strategic, however you want to segment it out. And then understand for each of these customer groups, what is the minimum experience that they need to be successful on your product, and then back into it from there. Some of the things that I'm encouraging folks to do is really think about your toolkit. Are you doing education drip campaigns? Are you holding webinars where you're getting multiple customers together and talking about how to solve this problem? Surfacing those problem statements and doing special webinars to solve those problem statements. Are you launching community? Ways that you can continue to engage and grow your customer base that doesn't require that one-to-one human touch. It gives you that one-to-many. And then you can actually sprinkle all of those learnings through the entire portfolio from SMB all the way up to enterprise and strategic, and then peel back from there. Again, that's another much longer conversation, but it's a good thing to think through in your organization, especially in the do more with same or do more with less world.
Yes, absolutely. And how do you automate that? And how do you leverage the technologies that we got in terms of AI coming into our scenario? Whole different conversation. We are going to be hosting a webinar on community. I think we're coming up that in shortly in our schedule, so stay tuned for that. But I think that's all that we had time for today. Miranda, thank you so much. That's been really, really helpful. And I love that you've shared your personal story with us. I personally took a lot away from that. I think my biggest nugget was that interview the company and how you look at them holistically, because maybe we're more inclined to go with the job offer rather than really looking at whether this is the right fit for you. So I think that was a great story from that point of view.
No, thank you. My pleasure. And again, I just want to let everybody know, feel free to, reach out on LinkedIn. I love connecting with other professionals on LinkedIn. So please feel free to do so.
Thank you. That is kind. And I like it, obviously, like you said, build your community. And if you don't do anything, then start with us too today. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And that's our session for April. And we're back in May. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening, great day, wherever you are. Take care. Bye-bye.